Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, missing in transit, airlines losing children. In the second watch, the biggest failure of Jamaica, crime or education. And the winner is, well, our social media question we ask, what would you say is the biggest failure of Jamaica? Please share responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's our quote.
All right, here we go with the I quote, the island quote for today. Every day, devil help thief. One day, God will help watchman. Every day, the devil helps the thief. One day, God will help the watchman. We should not despair when it appears to us that unscrupulous persons continue to take advantage of us with no apparent deterrent. God never sleeps and is fully aware of everything that occurs. He will one day reward the efforts of the faithful.
Good morning, Dr. Blair. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm good, thanks.
I hear you're doing some interesting patois there and
I try.
Jamaican quotes. how the devil is a devil or devil? What is
Devil.
that? Devil. And
Devil.
it means devil in English, eh?
Yes.
I see. I have no comments on that. That's what I'm going to leave that alone. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone. Yeah?
All right.
The
Every
first time to be
blessing.
back. Yes, after this break.
Answers and Simplicity are celebrating Jamaica's 60 with up to 60% off. Up to 60% off from Answers Gifts and Home Center, Answers for Children and Simplicity. Now till Saturday, September 3. Answers and Simplicity store-wide sale. Come celebrate 60 with us.
Operations Counseling Youth Center in association with Caribbean Dreams present Love in Action, an evangelistic mission thrust in Spanish Town, St. Catherine. We'll be walking through several of our Spanish Town communities, bringing good tidings. August 12 to 18, 2022, with the grand culmination in the Spanish Town Bus Park on August 19 at 5 p.m. Come on, come all. It's Love in Action, reaching the lost at any cost.
Love 101 now presents Facts on Monkeypox. There are no treatments specifically for monkeypox virus infections. For mild cases of monkeypox, over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen and acetaminophen can help with symptoms. Avoiding skin-to-skin contact is the best way to limit the spread of monkeypox. That was Facts on Monkeypox, presented by Love 101 FM.
Digicel, Jamaica, haha. Always I put you first, and that we love, so we put in the work. Internet, yeah, fast like boat. Digicel, we say #1 network. Good connection, coverage calls. Digicel, love you how we set the bar. Jamaica, big up Jamaica. Jamaica, made in Jamaica.
For us, yard come first. Digicel, made in Jamaica.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, headline from Newsweek.com, July 2022. And I am quoting the headline. Parents beware. Mom recounts airline losing child in viral TikTok video. And from simplifying.com. Simplifying.com. Also, July 2022. Oops. American airline loses an unaccompanied minor. End of quote. And those are just the two most recent cases. I've heard horror stories about when an airline loses your bag. But what happens if an airline loses your kid? You're probably in the height of the travel season, and your child is probably traveling alone. Are you confident he or she will reach his or her destination safe and horror-free? Well, to discuss these issues, we have online Mrs. Shelley Ann Colley, owner of Travelers Care, and Bishop Steve Blair, manager of Praise Travel, owner of Travel Saver, A to Z Solutions, and host of The Rock here on Love FM. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, good to have you both with us. I trust you are doing well.
Yes, sir.
I am, thank you.
All right, let me begin with you, Bishop Blair. Based on your experience, what are the main reasons for children traveling alone, and how common is the practice, really?
Well, children have been traveling alone for a long time. The airline has processes in place to assist parents, but there are times that a parent may try to send the child with someone, or if they feel the child is old enough and the airline will allow it, then that child may travel alone. The thing, though, is because of the stringent laws that have been placed the last 2 years, this should be something that doesn't happen too often, because once a minor is traveling, especially if they're traveling with an aunt or grandparent, the airlines now demand that a letter is given by the parent because of all the child trafficking issues. And that letter now more than ever should be verified by JP. So it's not something that should be happening as much anymore, but it has happened where children have traveled alone because they're 15 or 16. But the airlines have been working very hard, especially with the American government, to prevent children from traveling alone without consent.
So let me just clarify there. You're saying that the common practice is that a letter be verified by JP. The child is supposed to have that in his or her possession.
Well, I've seen in the past where a parent just writes a letter and sends. But up to 2 weeks ago, we had a child coming from Detroit to Jamaica. She had traveled alone from Fort Lauderdale, spent time with her family in Detroit. The airline did not demand anything. So once she was traveling internationally, the airline did not board her. She's 16 years old, I think she is. She had to stay in Detroit. Her father in Fort Lauderdale had to send a letter, and she traveled a day later to Jamaica. I was told by the airline when I demanded to find out why. They said, well, she's going to Jamaica, and there are certain laws now in place to prevent her at that age from traveling without parental consent. So it will happen a lot more within the U.S., but as far as the child traveling from here, no. The American government and the Jamaican government are really pushing because of all the child trafficking issues to avoid these kind of things taking place. We've seen so many children get lost or because they've not gone through the process of, we call it unaccompanied minor, traveling with a hero hostess. It would be sad though that if a hero hostess has a child, that they would lose a child. But the loss of a child would normally happen when that child is not going through the regular process.
Yes, right. And I want to use this as a segue for Mrs. Colley. Mrs. Colley, I gather that you are a former flight attendant, right? I don't know if you want to comment on anything that Bishop Blair said, but how does can an airline lose a child really? Can you share with us a few scenarios that you are aware of?
Absolutely. Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me? No?
Yes, not so loud as I'd want to. Can you put the microphone closer to your mouth? Yes, go ahead now, please.
Okay. So there's many scenarios in which an airline can lose a child. The first one is deviating from procedures like Dr. Pierce said. If there are certain procedures that the airline sets in place, as a former flight attendant, I've had my fair share of, and managing flight attendants, I've had my fair share of dealing with these situations, coaching my own flight attendants. And that's the first one, deviating from procedures. For example, the child themselves, noticeably, if you're so in the United States, children can start traveling alone between 5 and 12. Most airlines have the same policy. The age range kind of differs here and there between airlines. Some of them go up to 17 as an unaccompanied minor child. Now, when the children fly within those age groups, usually it's not between the 5 and the 12-year-olds, it's between the 12 and the 17-year-olds that walk off the airplane because they don't want to wear the lanyard, they don't want to be identified as an unaccompanied minor, they feel they're old enough. And sometimes they blend in with the passengers and they just walk off the airplane, even though a lot of the times you'll tell them, do not leave this aircraft unless you have a flight attendant or someone comes to get you, remain seated. So that's one scenario. The second scenario is within connections. Misinformation. One agent didn't pass on the information to the other agent, or the agent didn't come down to the gate and pick up the unaccompanied minor. Another thing too is sometimes the flight attendant themselves, if they're trying to get off the airplane, they'll walk the child up. If they're late connections or whatever, they'll walk the child up to the gate. Perhaps that gate agent didn't see the child who's standing there. And sometimes themselves, the parents will come and take the child without signing paperwork and documentation for receiving the child. So I've seen that situation happen. Staffing issues, not enough people. Parents sometimes do not pick up their children on time, and now you have this child that's bouncing from gate to gate with a gate agent who sometimes is busy working 2 or 3 flights. So we've seen that happen as well. And just simply the issue of miscommunication, putting the child on the wrong plane. We just had that here in the United States. Irregular operations is a major one. If there's weather delays, cancellations, that kind of thing, the child might not be able at the time to get the attention he or she needs. And so in retrospect, a lot of the times the miscommunication happens there and the child ends up where they're not supposed to. Not deliberately, I don't believe, working in this industry for 23 years, but it does happen.
Yes, and how common is the practice? Well, the situation. Yeah, children losing, being lost in transit.
It has happened. I have dealt with several situations in my career. It has happened more so often this summer than I've seen in the past.
Tell you what, Miss Colley. Mrs. Colley, I'm so sorry. We're up on a break. Hold that thought. We'll be right back, okay?
Get better coverage for yourself and your family as low as $800 a month. The time by JN Life Vest from JN Life Insurance is
7:16.
Juicy patty them double up the choices. And we know say you want to like it. And you can start your morning and fright with a cup of porridge full up of beer niceness. Two combination which one we try first. When you are go to school or you are go to work forward we double can't be twice the flavor. Or could that the pecan you end up a paper. Try our pecan porridge. That's peanut mixed with hominy. Or our double corn porridge. That's hominy mixed with cornmeal. Try it today at Juicy Patties.
Available at participating stores.
Thinking of contracting a cleaner? Contact Bulldog Cleaning Services for office cleaning, commercial cleaning, janitorial services, post-construction cleaning, Airbnb and apartment cleaning, tile strip and restoration. Pest control services are available. Contact us at 876-227-3612. Superb discount to contract customers. Bulldog Cleaning Services, your professional cleaners.
Colgate Triple Action. 3 benefits for a deep clean. As a mother, you always want to give the best to your family and to make them happy. With Colgate Triple Action, you give them 3 reasons to smile: cavity protection, whiter teeth, and fresh breath. A unique formula with a minty flavor they will love. Colgate Triple Action. Find it at your favorite store.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Toussaint, and in this the first watch. We are talking about missing in transit, airline losing children. And in so doing, we have online Bishop Steve Blair, manager of Praise Travel and owner of Travel Saver, A to Z Solutions, and Mrs. Shelley-Ann Corley, owner of Travelers Care. Before the break, Mrs. Corley, I know we're having some issues there with your microphone. I hope they're sorted. I hope it's sorted out now. You're telling us about you're telling us about the how commonplace it was, your experience.
So I have seen it several times that I've dealt with. It has happened more so now in the summer, I think, because of the major staff issues that the airlines are having than any time before. There have been many one-off situations all over the United States, but this summer, if you Google it, you'll see at least about 10 just this summer, which is, I would say, pretty common. But I do think that's stemming from the staffing issue that has been happening.
Yeah. Bishop Blair, as a stakeholder within the travel industry, what are some of the challenges you have observed or concerns you have when minors are being booked for flights, the booking process?
Well, I'd like to say 2 things about that. One, as she mentioned earlier, the airlines do have that process. Parents are not very happy with it. In some cases, they pay $100 US each way or $150 US each way. And they've tried in the past to get around it. But the most important thing, especially from what she said, is the need for the parents to be on time, because the system is not always going to work efficiently. And especially when you're dealing with countries like the United States, you have predators that are always lurking, looking for children. Human trafficking is a very big deal, and they've got to be very careful. If they leave these children, if the flight is late or the operations are not going perfectly, that these children can be at risk. So the points made by her as a flight attendant in the past is very, very important. And I know that in the American case, with people, the traffic and the airport, people may not be on time. But also being Jamaican, people don't value time. And when it comes to operations like this, you have to value time, because they're not going to stand up and wait forever for a parent to show up.
Yeah, but Bishop, if you suspect that this is a case of child trafficking, what is normally done? What should be done from your end?
Well, what we're seeing here is that even when everything that is done correctly, um, situations arise,
Right.
and the best thing has to be saying to that child that you're not to um, depart or leave an area. You're not to leave with anyone else. The typical parent-child conversation in regards to strangers, but the onus then becomes on the parent because the system should work. It may not always work because nothing is perfect, but you paid on the airline to take that child from one place to another, and once they get there, they're now depending on you or your, normally what the system asks for is what is the name of the person picking up the child. All of those things should be in place and given to the airline ahead of time. So you even give that child to somebody else, which can be dangerous, and you have a letter with that child for that person to take the child to the foreign airport. You've got to be very, very careful. We still have, let me just mention very quickly, and this is a totally different story, but we still have missing children. I can't recall, I did a program on this, and I mentioned this several times ago, where there were still probably over 1,500 children at the end of each year that were not accounted for. If I remember, it was either 150 or 1,500. But that is still a big deal. When I say unaccounted for, I'm talking just in Jamaica. So when you're talking about human trafficking and meeting 14 or 15-year-old girls on the back road or just these different issues, the government are demanding that a process be followed. And sometimes parents just don't like that process because of the costs involved.
Yeah. Mrs. Corley, airline policies, I don't know if you want to comment on what was said by Bishop a while ago, but along with that, what are the policies in terms of airlines and legal issues regarding minors traveling? And if they are lost, what is the legal redress that can be accessed?
So some of the policies in place for minors traveling. So minors travel, there are thousands and thousands of minors that travel, and they've been doing this for many years now. And like Dr. Blair said, there's a fee attached to it. Some airlines have different fees, ranging costs. And some of the policies that are in place, they tell you, the first thing they tell you is that if your child is not mature enough to fly, they shouldn't be flying. If they're not able to go to baggage claim themselves, if they're not able to ask for help, if they're not able to evacuate an aircraft, if they're not able to have the capacity to speak and just simply help themselves in the event of some changes. So if there are some changes, they should be able to fend for them. And really and truly, that's what the airline policy is. It tells you that you need to be there 30 minutes prior to scheduled arrival time. And clearly, some parents don't do that. But again, not valuing time. But those are some of the policies. And the most important one, like I just mentioned, is the first one. There are some children out there that are not capable, that are not old enough, that are not mature enough to fly by themselves. But because of whatever reason, whether it's they don't have the time, they don't have a visa, they don't have the capacity to travel, they don't like to travel, it's cheaper for them to just send a child, whatever it is, which is where my company comes in. If you don't have those capabilities or the resources for that, that's where Traveler Care comes in. We will pick up your child, we fly with that child, alleviating all those additional stresses from that parent or that loved one. And we will fly with that child, getting him or her there safe to you, alleviating all the possibilities. You don't know who's sitting next to your child on an airplane. You don't know who's sitting next to your child in a terminal if they have to go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. So there's so many different things. And again, the most important policy is that you cannot send that child if that child isn't mature enough to fly. I have a child, and I mean, I would not send her on an airplane by herself because I know she wouldn't do well with those kind of stresses. It is scary for a lot of children. There are some who love it, But for some people, it's not the right thing for them.
Yes. And as we wrap our discussion, what are your suggestions, first of all, Mrs. Cawley, or recommendations when minors are traveling, especially to avoid getting lost, or if they end up getting lost in transit? Any recommendations, suggestions?
Absolutely. The first one is read the terms and conditions. It tells you everything before you book that airfare. You have to call the airline nonetheless, or the travel agency, to book an unaccompanied minor. You can't just do that on a website. So you have to read the terms and conditions. Read the fine. The second one is ensure that your child has your telephone number.
All right, we seem to have lost Mrs. Cawley. Are you back with us? Yes. Are you back with us, Mrs. Cawley? Good. Go ahead.
So, like I said before, make sure your child has your full name, address, who's picking them up, your telephone number. You'd be surprised how many people and how many children travel who don't know their mother's first and last name or telephone number or address or where they're going. That's very important. There are apps available where you can track flights. Flight Aware is a great one. Don't leave that airport until that child is on that airplane and that airplane takes off. When you need to be there 30 minutes prior, be there so you can collect your child. Another one is to ensure that, again, you have all the information for that airline. The child needs to be able, if they have a cell phone, that's great. These kids these days are pretty savvy when it comes to cell phones and iPads. If they're connecting, they have the capability of putting on the Wi-Fi in the airport. Every airport has Wi-Fi. You can FaceTime or call that child to ensure that that child is doing well. And those are some of the suggestions. Just keeping abreast of everything that's going on. You have to. It's your child. And if that child gets lost, the first thing you need to do is reach out to the airline. Running to the media is not the first thing, but most people do that just to get answers. But work with the airline. They will provide you with those answers that you need.
Great. Bishop Blair, like to add anything to that?
Yes. Just become aware of the rules. Ask questions. She made a very, very important point. We are never aware as to when a flight is going to get delayed or what may happen. Never leave the airport until that flight is off, and make sure there's the ability for communication. The point she's made says it all. We've seen children that don't know phone numbers or addresses. So all of that information is necessary. Once the travel agent makes the payment or the airline takes the payment for the UM, don't assume that everything is hunky-dory and that's all done. Give the child rule. Make sure they don't leave that airport with anybody else, and that will protect the process. That is the most important thing. And teach them to scream, to do whatever is necessary, because there's a lot of missing children in this world. So take nothing for granted.
Yes. And just before we go, we have 1 minute left. This question is for you, Mrs. Cawley, coming into the studio. Is putting the children in first class a better option?
No, you can put the child anywhere on board the aircraft. First class is not a better option. First class just gives you a little bit more food. But what most airlines are doing, I've created a policy back when I worked for an airline. I helped create the policy where all the children need to sit together. So one particular airline that does fly to Jamaica, if you notice, most of the children will sit together in the back of the airline so that flight attendant has full eye on those children. And the kids get to interact with each other. They're traveling together, that kind of thing. But no, absolutely not. We're already having issues with paying $50. I don't think buying a first class ticket is going to fix the issue.
Okay.
And some airlines don't take unaccompanied minors, and children on
first class
often get a chance to travel alone. So be very careful. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you both for joining us.
Certainly.
Yeah. Yes, thank you both for joining us. We're totally out of time. Very informative and insightful discussion. Have a productive and safe day. Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
Talk to
JN Bank today to find out about achieving your own sweet home in 30 days. The time by JN Bank Mortgage is
7:30 and a half.
Let's get up and go.
The I Love Summer Road Tours and Pull-Ups come to a close this coming Saturday, August 20, with the big one in cool Mandeville. Oh yes, it's time to wrap up the ILS Road Tour, and we're doing it in fine style. Mandeville, are you ready for the exciting music-filling, foot-stomping, belly-buster laughing, enough niceness in the I Love Summer Road Tour? It's happening this coming Saturday, August 20. You can't afford to miss it, and we'll be live on Love 101 FM, the family station. See you there.
Keep fully connected with Flow Fiber Fast Internet at home and on the road with LTE data and calls for a fast, reliable experience anywhere. Over 500 communities have been upgraded since 2020, making more of Jamaica Flow Fiber Fast. And with Yard and Road, get Flow Fiber Faster Yard and LTE Road for as low as $3,999 plus GCT. Visit discoverflow.co to get connected on Jamaica's largest network. Conditions apply.
Oh, welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are really saying and doing in the Gleaner. Crofts Hill dreams of gold, but prospectors urge caution. Also, probes launched into alleged cop beating of teen at bus center. Also in the Gleaner, Jamaica urged to get on board tourism train service. Interesting. In the Observer, that was the Gleaner actually. In the Observer, JTA wants carrots. Smith suggests free schooling for teachers' children. Other perks to halt exodus. Also, disabled by secrecy. JAMP says Integrity Commission Act gag clause limits its ability to assist political ombudsman. And then finally, in the Observer, Gregory Park residents experiencing peace since firebombing suspect killed. Those are some of the major stories in our newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. What would you say is the biggest failure of Jamaica? Please leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
It's independence once again, and that means celebration. And Berger's big Independence Day sale. Get 10% off Berger Everglow, 303, 404, Royale, Weatherproof, and more. Don't miss out on Berger's big savings in every drop. Visit your nearest hardware or the color shop now. Happy 60th Independence, Jamaica. Berger, for lasting beauty and protection.
Monkeypox is in Jamaica. If you are experiencing fever, intense headache, muscle aches, and or rash on the skin, you must isolate immediately and call ahead to your health center or doctor before visiting. All members of the public should wear a mask, frequently wash hands, and practice physical distancing. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
You thought you were going to marry him, but you both broke up. And he marries another woman. Why? Was she doing something you were not? Did he heal, or was he ever in love with you? Well, you get to know this and more inside the program designed for men, hosted by men, with guests who are men, this Wednesday, August 17th at 5:30 p.m. as we take a look at when he marries another woman after a breakup. Why? That's the mailbox this Wednesday, August 17th, 5:30 p.m. with yours truly, Pastor Courtney Morrison and Kevin Bailey, right here on Love 101, the family station. The mailbox is sponsored by Fosterage Company Limited, your electrical, solar, and lighting people.
Which part of the man are God when you hear the trumpet.
Get ready for another exciting World of Worship Wednesday inside Alive, 1 to 5, August 17. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock. More prayer, more power. 2:15, we feature KCJ as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m. inside Community Conversations, we explore Mandeville. All this and more will come your way inside Alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. with me, Sarah, and the chirpy one on the family station, Love 101, Jamaica 60, reigniting a nation for greatness.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join Nadine for a look at how our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answered today's question. What would you say is the biggest failure of Jamaica? Nadine.
Okay, good morning. All right, I have quite a bit of answers here, responses here. Auntie Pam says the failure is to get crime under control despite our best actions and implementations. Marcia says crime and violence, that is too much out of control. Marlene.
Ourselves is our biggest failure.
What?
Because we disobey everything, every rule,
Okay,
every
we
regulation.
disobey. All right.
And that's why our country is
Faith says Jamaica's biggest failure is trust, selfishness, poor choices, ability to genuinely understand, appreciate, respect, and care for each other. This other person says, I think education is our biggest failure, as this is one of the contributing factors to crime. Most times, youths turn to crime because of the lack of education and the absence of a father figure. Good one. Nicole says, all crime. Why? Because it stems from lack of education from children resulting from parents that lack good parenting skills. This person at seeing a name says, with cameras around and technology, how do you something your child, they have their own way, so parents and airline, that's for the first watch. Adelta says Jamaica has failed in education over the years. We tend to do a top-up method. Edna.
Good morning, Morning Watch. I think the biggest failure for Jamaica at this time is not education, but crime.
Crime.
Crime is really getting out of hand.
Okay. And someone else just said crime. So I guess, crime and education. Let's hear what the discussion will unfold. Over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so very much, and thanks to those who sent in the responses. Perhaps it's a tie between crime and education so far in the responses. So, which is truly Jamaica's biggest failure, crime or education? Interestingly, on July 28th, former Prime Minister Bruce Golding declared that education was the biggest failure of the independence era in Jamaica. But in a poll conducted by Don Anderson and made public earlier this month, crime is listed as our country's biggest failure. So is it education? Is it crime? Or is it neither? Well, to answer these and other related questions, we have joining us so far the Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemhard, priest, social commentator, and author. And we're hoping to be connected with Dr. Knut Thompson, head of the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning, UWI. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Dr.
Good morning,
Nemhard. Good to have you. Yes, good to have you with us again.
Your viewers as well.
Yes. Are we connected to Dr. Thompson as yet? Nadine? Dr. Blair? Okay, we're not hearing from her.
Yes,
Okay,
I
not
was saying
connected
we're
as yet.
not
Okay.
getting through to
So
him.
good to have you, Dr. Nemhard. How are things where you are in your neck of the woods abroad there? How's the heat?
Very hot.
It is very hot.
Yes, we've been averaging in the 90s, I guess, for the past month. 91, 92. So it's that time of the year.
Oh boy.
Yes.
All right. Yes. Well, let's hit the ground running. Does crime or education, in your view, contribute Jamaica's biggest failure? And depending on how your answer, why is that so?
All right. I was listening to the commentators just before we came on. The Vox Pop. And it would appear to me that they're saying that crime is really the biggest problem that we have had. And then, of course, you referenced Bruce and Don Anderson giving opposite, views.
Mm-hmm.
But I would, looking at from 1962, and I was born probably a couple of years before. But looking at the way the country has, grown over that time, and the advances really that we have made in education, once we had made the break from the British and had to take over things under our own control, I think any fair-minded person would say that we have made really important strides, let me put it that way, in terms of the educating of our people. I mean, we have had problems, of course, but I think by and large, I would say that we have really done that. Where crime is concerned, immediately after independence, we had crime, but not to the extent, certainly, that we have it today. The country was just grappling with becoming itself, having been, given that opportunity in independence to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was somewhere from the 1970s up. I think the 1960s were relatively crime-free, I would say, in terms of violent criminality. Certainly nothing of the nature that we have today. The 1960s, a time of growth, a time of, a nation really feeling its feet as a young nation. But it is in the 70s that crime really took off as a serious concern for this country. And it was largely motivated by political interests. And then we had the devastating 80s and the 90s into where we are today. So to answer the question very quickly, having surveyed both aspects, the education and the crime that we have seen, I would give crime the winner in terms of the most serious concern, that we have had since independence.
Yeah. There are those, Dr. Nemhard, who would contend that in many ways, both crime and education, they are not mutually exclusive. In what ways would you say that they are interconnected and one results in the other?
It's a very complicated problem, but I don't think that the real sociological or even perhaps psychological connection between a poor education and crime, can be sustained. And why do I say that? To accept that there's a direct correlation between education and crime is to kind of say that, those who have grown up in depressed communities, those who have been exposed too long to poverty, are themselves the ones who are prone to committing crime in the society. But I think we have to be very careful there, because crime, as we know, runs the whole gamut of the society. And there are educated elites themselves who commit crime. They may not be shooting guns like the shotters, but they are using their brains and the education that they have garnered in a way to strategize and to organize crime in the higher echelons, I would say, of the...
Tell you what, Doc. Could you just hold that thought? Very interesting point you're making there. We're up on a break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Operations Counseling Youth Center in association with Caribbean Dreams present Love in Action, an evangelistic mission thrust in Spanish Town, St. Catherine. We'll be walking through several of our Spanish Town communities, bringing good tidings. August 12 to 18, 2022, with the grand culmination in the Spanish Town Bus Park on August 19 at 5 p.m. Come on, come all. It's Love in Action, reaching the lost at any cost.
Get ready for another exciting World of Worship Wednesday inside Alive, 1 to 5, August 17. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock. More prayer, more power. 2:15, we feature KCJ as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m. inside Community Conversations, we explore Mandeville. All this and more will come your way inside Alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. with me, Sarah, and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101, Jamaica 60, reigniting a nation for greatness.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Toussaint, and in this second watch, we are discussing the whole matter of crime vis-a-vis education. Which one constitutes the biggest failure in Jamaica today? And we have online the Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemhart, priest, social commentator, and author. And before the break, he was really giving us some serious thoughts in regards to the interconnectivity between crime and education, poor education. Continue, please, Reverend Nemhart.
Right. I really get concerned about the argument that says that because you're poor, you're destined to a life of crime. Because we know that there are so many Jamaicans who have been born poor in depressed circumstances, and yet they have been able to fashion a livable, environment for themselves without having to turn to crime. And even in the inner cities, that one would suggest is prone to that kind of, to the development of crime. There are many inside there who have shone and have stepped out and have done very well for themselves. And then, of course, once you make that kind of criticism of the poor environment producing crime, then, of course, there's a tendency to excuse the so-called upper echelons of society or the elites and so on, and of society, as if they are not contributing to the crime problem. So I'm very careful to make the correlation between poor education and crime. The large majority of the Jamaican people, I would say as close as probably 95% or even more, are not crime producers. They're out there seeking to eke out a living in very difficult circumstances, and yet they never really turn to crime. The real rampant criminality and murderous criminality that we have in the country is something that is being practiced by probably 5% of the population. I mean, how many of the young men who act as shotters and as hitmen and are carrying out crime in these communities, how many of them, what percentage of the population do they represent? And those who are organizing, and sometimes we tend to see crime as just a violent crime. What about those who are masterminding the movement of drugs across the country, the movement of guns from the United States to Jamaica? And some of them are among, I won't say some of them because I don't know for sure, but you can rest assured that those who are doing that sort of thing are well educated.
Yes. Where though, Doc, would you place the breakdown of family life and the spirituality in the discussion?
That is a real big one. Because, you know, when you talk about family life, you talk about foundations. And what we find in too many of our families is that the foundations for a productive life sometimes are non-existent. And, you know, sometimes, you know, the way in which parenting is done and the difficulties that parents have, especially the economic difficulties that they face to really deal with their families, it is really a besetting sin, a besetting problem that we have that I don't think is being addressed as closely by the government or by civil society as it ought. For example, I believe that we should be training more social workers, a greater cadre of social workers, and let them loose in the community so that they, you know, the domestic violence that we see so often, you know, people not being able to resolve conflicts. We need to have more trained personnel out in the communities. And how much would it take for the government to really invest in training that cadre of persons and, you know, deploying them in the community so that they can be a kind of buffer or assisting parents in the whole matter of because parents really need help. I know that when you have the ZOSOs, for example, you know, the social intervention, I mean, that aspect of it, I don't know to what extent, you know, the government has is able to deploy, you know, social workers and so on to help in the whole matter of assisting parents to be better parents. Because trust me, too many of those who say that they're parents, parenting is not just a matter of getting a child. It's a whole culture. And what do you put in the life of a child to help that child to grow up so that they can turn their eyes against criminality as a way forward?
Yes. You know, among church circles and even outside, 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14 is oftentimes quoted. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves, seek my face, turn from the wicked way, then will I hear from heaven, heal their land, forgive their sins, and heal their land. And persons are wondering, with so many churches per square mile, with the fact that every Tuesday and Wednesday in almost every church there are prayer meetings. People are ardently seeking God and praying on behalf of this nation. Why is it that Jamaica has not been healed? How do you respond to that?
Because people think that God is going to act by some kind of divine fiat. It's as if God is putting, you know, we are leaking, and God is going to put his finger into the dike of our social problems. From my understanding of God, I mean, that's not how we operate. If my people who are called by my name will do A, B, C, D, E, then I will hear. But you know, in a way, that's Old Testament theology, because God has heard. And not only has God heard, but God has acted. And he has shown thee, oh man, what is good. And what does he require? You know, it's not that we don't know what to do and what is the correct thing to do. But the expecting God to, I'm not saying, you know, I could never give the impression that I'm against praying or seeking God. I mean, otherwise I'd have to take off my collar.
Yes.
But the point is that too often we sit back, we do these things and we sit back and we blame others. And one of the, if I can call him a personality that gets a lot of blame is the devil. Oh, the devil is among us and the demons are among us. And yes, the demons are among us, but they do not come in that kind of abstract form. They are in the minds of people who are covetous. They're in the minds of people who are mean. They're in the minds of people who are dog-hearted and who will not hesitate to kill somebody. You pull the trigger, I don't see God, and you're grabbing your hand and say, don't do that. That's not how he works. But he has shown us we have sufficient foundation from the whole redemptive history that God has shown us in Jesus Christ to help us to understand what it really means to love your neighbor, what it really means to build a society that is based on the unconditional love that he has come to make known among us in his very person, by his very death upon the cross, in terms of what we believe as Christians. So I believe that, especially where the church is concerned, there are a number of things I think that we have to rethink, and we cannot just sit back and think that, God is really going to just intervene. We are his hands, as we tend to glibly say. We are his feet. We are his eyes. We are his ears. And we say those things very glibly, but really, that's really what we are. And we must be out there in the community then as a force for good, making a difference. I talked about the social work thing. I mean, if the church and government could cooperate in so many young people out there in the communities, bright young people, helping them, getting them trained so that they can be sources of good, counselors and, social interveners in the communities. I mean, how much further would we go as a society?
So in pointed ways, Dr. Nemard, tell us what we need to do at different levels, whether in family, church, broader society, politics, entertainment, media. Can you just give us some ideas and a pointed ways as we wrap within 2 minutes?
All right. As you put your finger on all of those areas, you see how multifaceted and wide the whole problem is. But I think, like I said with the church, I think one of the best things that the church could do is to look within its own community, come together. There's not, I don't see that there's a kind of denominational across the divide attempt by churches to really come together and to talk about this problem. I don't see the Roman Catholics meeting with the Seventh-day Adventists and Anglicans and so on and coming
when the JCC meets, they discuss those things, I'm assuming.
Yeah, but we have to move beyond discussion. The proof of the pudding is always in the eating, man, and sometimes we chat too much.
Okay.
We need to get down to the nitty-gritty and plan. But there's too much of a divide between the denominations. And they could be a force for good in terms of getting what I'm talking about, a social program really going. It's not left to just one denomination in its own little neck of the woods doing things. It has to be a joined up effort between the churches if they're really going to be a force for good. Secondly, of course, the whole political situation. I now hear the opposition leader calling for a greater, collaboration between themselves and the government. It's not about, political parties. Yes, the government is in charge and they have to deploy the resources and get ahead of the problem. But it's a Jamaican problem. And to the extent that they can talk about these things, that's one thing. But then again, the fall down is in implementation, it's in action. Again, we talk too much.
Yes, well,
and it's not. Yes.
Yes. No, tell you what, Doc, we are out of time. We can't talk anymore or too much on this issue at this point. But we want to thank you so very much for joining us, Dr. Nemard. Interesting points you have raised, and we continue to not only do the talking, but remember that faith without works is dead.
It's dead. It's kaput.
Yes. Have a productive day.
Thank you, my brother. And you do the same, and for your viewers as well.
Bless you. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 959627. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, reminding you to be purposeful, faithful, thankful, and watchful as I hand you back to Love in the Morning with Nadine Blair.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for making it Love 101 and the Morning